Hey everyone, Josh here with Avalanche Outfitters. I wanted to do a discussion kind of about safety in the backcountry. And so I'm going to kind of get into kind of the stuff that I carry for being safe in the backcountry. Maybe some scenarios of how to keep yourself safer, or possibly even if something happens, a situation comes up, what to do to keep yourself safe, healthy, and alive. So let's get into it. So let's get into some of these essential pieces of gear for safety that I think everybody should carry regardless. And I'm just going to name them off, and then we'll get more into it about what we're talking about. So first thing is obviously having some sort of GPS or messaging device, whether you have service or not. Even if you have service, I do still suggest having a backup plan. Zoleo, Garmin InReaches are all great. I really try to stray people away from a satellite phone. They probably have gotten better, but relying on just your cell phone's satellite messaging and stuff like that, I wouldn't do that. And especially if you've never been in the area, where you may or may not know the capabilities of what could or could not, areas that could or could not have service. Number two, first aid kit. I'm not saying you have to carry an entire med kit, EMT wilderness style, but I do highly suggest having a decent med kit and some key things I like to throw in my med kit, which I'll get into that later. I'll kind of elaborate on more of what I really look for in a med kit when I'm guiding. So I have it on me just in case for any situation. Handgun is, in my opinion, something that I didn't carry for a long time, but I think that it could be useful in many situations. Now, if you're a rifle hunter, I wouldn't say you have to carry a handgun. If you're an archery hunter, I would kind of suggest it. If something happens, we do have bears, mountain lions, and wolves in Colorado. Black bears, we don't have grizzlies, but if you are in grizzly country, then yes, you definitely need to have a sidearm. Bear spray is one of those options of having it, or can pack it in lieu of a handgun, although I would prefer just to have the handgun. To me, if I got to use my handgun, then the stuff's really going down. Being CPR first aid capable is also something I really think people should do. If you plan on hunting backcountry wilderness areas a lot, I highly suggest not taking just a basic CPR first aid class. I highly suggest taking a full-on wilderness CPR first aid class, or just first aid class, wilderness first aid. It could really help you in the long run, in my opinion. Few other things, obviously, I guess that's kind of my main stuff. Always have extra water. That's a huge thing. Enough water. So I guess enough water to where you're going to get through your day. And I also do suggest some sort of filtration device. That way, if you do run out of water, or you have to spend the night or something like that, the Sawyer squeezes are super handy to have. You can fill them up out of almost anywhere and filter water into your Nalgene or your other water bottle. It's super handy. I highly suggest having something like that. Having some sort of food source is another big thing. I have even tested like Mountain House meals. Hot water just makes them go faster, absorb faster. You can still do them with like cold water, it just takes forever, but you never know if you're gonna have to stay out overnight. I have what I call a survival kit in my pack, and I always suggest somebody has something like that. I can get into those contents of that here. I got to go get my pack out, and then I will get into that kind of stuff. And you know, part of my survival kit is also my kill kit. So having those kinds of items in there is something that I think everybody should have, and I will elaborate on those. So let me get some of this stuff out and we can elaborate on it. Okay guys, so first thing is the Garmin inReach. That's what I carry. I carry the inReach Messenger Plus. It's a lot smaller. I can send pictures on it if I have to. It's got the SOS button on the side. It links to my phone and everything like that. Now one big thing is, if you're going to use these, I highly suggest having, and regardless, even for your phone, an extra battery pack. And I've got this little case here where I actually carry different chargers just in case, for all my devices. Luckily they're all on the same thing now, so that made it kind of nice to have that. So that's, you know, this is kind of your biggest you know, safety thing. Something happens, you have this. If you send messages to people, I always suggest having the feature on where they can pull up your GPS coordinates. That way, if they haven't heard from you in a while and they're getting concerned, and maybe you possibly got hurt or something like that, then they at least the safety has a starting point of your last reference, which could really help a ton. For anybody wondering, usually on like the Garmin Messenger, it's on the bottom left hand side next to the where you type, and it'll be a little orange balloon thing. You click that, and when it's lit up, then you are doing that. And then yeah, anybody that you send a message to, they can actually click on that and see your GPS coordinates. Next thing, first aid kits. So I really like these adventure medical kits. This is my big one. I keep this typically in camp if I'm doing a guided hunt. But it's also something that I can fit in my pack. I don't even know what it weighs, but it's not very heavy. It's really nice to have. Obviously I haven't used it much, but it's got all kinds of stuff in it. One of the things that I like to carry or try to carry is an EpiPen, just in case. I mean, most people that are allergic to something, they kind of know if they are, so they might have something like this, but it's something that you can always have. One big thing I like about this one here, this larger one, is the field trauma pack. It's got a whole different little pull out that I can actually, if this is just what I want, I can take this and just throw it in my pack for like anything that's trauma. They also make a hunter's pack, stuff like that. It's got ace band, or I call it vet wrap, some duct tape. I mean, it's got quite a bit of stuff. It's really nice. This one's a little heavier, but you know, you can kind of see on the trauma pack what it's got. They've even got one with blood stop and everything like that. Here's a smaller one. This is the Mountain Series, and carry this. One thing I always do throw in my packs is super glue. Super glue. This has some other stuff in here. Stop bleeding fast. I think it's just bandages is all that is. But yes, always have a first aid kit. I suggest every hunter carries a first aid kit. Getting down to like the other stuff, bear spray. I really don't carry bear spray. This stuff hasn't been used in a long time, or it hasn't even been touched, obviously. The biggest thing is, if you are going to use bear spray, make sure that the wind is at your back or coming from side to side, so you don't gas yourself out. That's not very fun. We'll get into, let's see, my survival pack. Like I said, I always kind of have one of these. This is a peak meal. You can use them with cold water. They just take forever, but it's better than nothing in a survival situation. My survival pack, orange marking tape. use this for a ton of different things. You can use this for marking trail once you've shot something, if you need to, marking your trail back to camp, or in an emergency, you lay that out and, you know, make it so that somebody could possibly track you down. This is my little survival kit. I got little zip ties in here. Got a little fire kit just in case. I kind of threw this strap in here. I don't know why. I mean, just for something, if I had to wrap this around a small tree and tie it off, you know, I could. This is a spoon with a knife in it. Couple carabiners. You can always use these to make a, you know, pulley if you need to. Electrical tape can cure everything. A water and windproof lighter, which can definitely be huge to have. This is a smaller Leatherman that I carry just in case. Another part of my emergency, I also have this bigger Leatherman. I don't know why, but just to have it. This one's actually got little heads and stuff in case somebody's gun or something or bow gets messed up. The other thing I carry in my survival kit is these hot hands. Got one for the body, one for my hands. I carry these because I get my back gets sore really bad. Lidocaine patch. But these things here, in an emergency situation, these could save your life. If you're getting to the point where you're feeling like you're gonna die, these can go in your socks, help keep your feet warmer. I put this over my chest, basically over my heart. It seems to always help warm me up really quick, especially if I have to use my survival blanket, which I don't have. The mice got into that, so I don't have one right now. It's on order. Obviously, paracord is a huge thing. And another part of my survival kit is, or any kit, is my medicines. I got Pepto-Bismol, Benadryl, Aleve, got some cold medicine. I also have some sort of hydrate electrolyte packets in here, just so that I have them just in case. Toilet paper, obviously, is a huge thing. The other things I have in my kill kit that could also be used like double duty, trash bags. You know, in an emergency, a trash bag can help keep you warm. It can be a poncho, stuff like that. I have this hunter's tarp. This is actually pretty nice. It's I think it's about 8 by 8. It might be smaller than that, but in an emergency, it's got 4 stakes in it too. I could turn it into a little tent if I had to, wrap up in it, anything like that. More paracord, cut resistant glove. I like to have these little wipes just in case. Extra flashlight, extra headlamp, super glue. Again, these are actually porta wipes. Just add water and they turn into a wet wipe. They're pretty fun to have. Extra knives. You know, I've usually got 2 of these Havalons in here to try and, you know, just in case I need them. Extra blades, stuff like that. So that's kind of like my emergency stuff. You know, and I kind of have it all separated in these different bags. Everybody makes nice ones. You know, I got Kuyu, I got Kafaru, or however you pronounce it. I got more Kuyu waterproof ones. It makes it kind of nice. Another thing I actually carry is these hiking crampons. These are Catula. They are flexible, so once you get them on your feet, they're not like ice climbing crampons, but they will flex with your boots. And I'll tell you what, when it's muddy, snowy, nasty, these things are a huge lifesaver. I've literally only forgot them one time, and I completely regretted it, and I was on a mountain goat hunt, and I almost thought I broke my knee doing bringing the goat out, and hit a snow patch and slipped and fell down. I wished I would have had those. But that's basically some of my main survival stuff that I would suggest everybody has. You can add stuff, you can take stuff out, but this is kind of my basics. A lot of this stuff I've never had to use, luckily, but in an emergency situation, you never know. And it's better to be prepared and have it and not need it than need it and not have it, right? So let's get into the wilderness first aid, stuff like that. Like, obviously, in a really bad situation, you're probably just going to call 911 or use your Garmin or whatever to get help. But surviving in that time could be your hardest thing that you got to do. So knowing how to take care of you or even a buddy safely without getting them injured worse or killing them till help arrives could be a huge thing. Knowing how to make a tourniquet if you don't have one, that is one thing that I need to put in my first aid kit, is a tourniquet just in case. But I mean, you can make a tourniquet out of paracord. I think they suggest having a larger strap than paracord now, so that you don't damage nerves and stuff like that. But honestly, would you rather have nerve damage or die? So there's kind of your choices in an emergency. So yeah, you got to kind of make that choice for yourself or your buddy or whatever, so that that's up to you. But knowing how to, if they fall down, support them. Make sure that if they do have broken bones, how to get those splinted. You can use duct tape and sticks. I mean, that's old school. But you could also possibly get off the mountain with that scenario if you had to. The biggest thing is knowing if they have a neck injury. Broken bones can be devastating by trying to get them out. Broken neck, obviously, knowing how to stabilize them, keep them comfortable, keep them calm, and stuff like that. If there's heavy bleeding from a spot that you can't put a tourniquet above or anything like that, you never know what could happen. So I highly suggest taking some sort of course like that so that you can either help your buddy, and they might not even be your buddy. You might run into somebody on the mountain. One thing I always am scared of, God forbid, would be somebody accidentally getting shot. That's a pretty scary thing of what would you do? How could you deal with it? Whether it's with a bow, which could be worse than a rifle even. And there's not a lot of scenarios or I guess schools or classes that would probably really prepare you for that. Maybe somebody needs to come up with a hunting style wilderness first aid that could possibly be a good idea just in case of those scenarios, because you never know. And I think any one of us that's not EMT, medical, or anything like that would probably have some pretty big issues trying to take care of somebody with a bullet hole wound or shot with a bow or something like that. And maybe even that's not combat trained. It might be something that we would do our best and maybe do what the movies told us to do, is just put pressure on it, stuff like that. But if that's all that you can do and that's all that you think it's right, that's what you can do. But I do suggest taking some sort of class or at least researching a little bit more. Now, the next thing I'd like to talk about is weather and safety and weather in the backcountry. Now, some of us hunt, or some of you and some of us hunt above timberline. Some hunt lower. Regardless of where you're hunting, you need to be mentally and at least somewhat physically prepared for some sort of natural, we won't call it a disaster, but something coming up. And one thing I was actually asked recently was, what would I suggest if my if I was caught in a lightning storm, of how to keep safe. And let's say I'm so here's this, let's just do a scenario. You're above timberline, there's no trees, you're basically almost on top of the peak. Watch the weather. That's a huge thing. Always watch the weather. If you've got the Garmin inReach, I do. I update my weather every single day, just to make sure. Sometimes if something's looking a little sketchy to me, I'll update the weather. Otherwise, I'll text somebody and ask them to, maybe check out a Doppler or something like that and tell me what looks like it's coming. If you're up high and it looks like something, let's say something looks like it's coming in. I don't really have anything super concerning right here. Maybe back this way, it's looking like it could get a little nasty, even though I know that all that weather goes that way. That's leaving me, that's headed north. We'll just say it was headed towards me. I'm probably gonna try to get off the mountain, or at least get down to tree line. Is it really worth the animal if you lose your life? And that's a big thing of backcountry hunting. So if you feel like something's coming in and you're gonna get either pounded with hail or rain or snow, lightning, anything, get off the mountain. Get to a safe point. You can always come back later on. And yeah, I understand there's times where I look at the weather and I freak out, want to get my clients down to a safe point, so that if we really do get hit, we're in a safe point, but we're also close enough to where if it blows over, we can get back up relatively quickly, or we can head back to camp. That comes into my call. And there's been times I have literally done that, made the call, got my clients off the mountain quite a ways, and then we waited it out, and it ended up not even touching us, and it looked like we wasted the hunt. But when your lives are in my hands, I don't want to be responsible for calling your family and telling them that we wanted to stick it out on the ridge and hope we could be all right, and we got struck by lightning, or you got struck by lightning. So better safe than sorry. With lightning, that was one thing that was asked. Here's the biggest thing: get down, away, get off ridges, get out of open meadows, get away from the big tall trees, anything like that. Best thing to do that I've read, obviously I've never been struck by lightning. There's been maybe once or twice where I was pretty scared and tried to do the best I could and this wasn't even with clients, this was just a private thing, is get down, find a bunch of trees that aren't real tall. There's maybe other trees a little bit further away, let's say 200 yards away, that are way taller. Get in those, drop any, if you got a metal frame pack, if you got metal in your pack, your rifle, even your bow, drop those, get those away from you. Maybe your pack might be all right, just if you've got your gear in it, but I don't suggest taking your rifle and leaning it up against a tree next to you. Get it kind of away from you where you can still see it. I don't really see if you're in a good spot, in a clump of trees and stuff, but metal does attract electricity, so kind of get it away from you if you possibly can. The next thing is stay low. When you're in the trees and stuff, don't sit right next to a tree. Get a little bit away from it. Try to stay out of the rain and everything. Don't have 4 guys huddled around one tree. If lightning does strike that tree, you're all gone. And it happened last year, unfortunately, to those 2 young hunters down in southwestern Colorado. Very unfortunate. It's a scary thing that did happen, and I pray for their families and everything, and I'm sorry that we lost the lives, but I think it also kind of opened some people's eyes of safety in the backcountry. and that's part of being prepared. You know, got to be a Boy Scout and always be prepared. But don't, you know, everybody kind of spread out a little bit. If lightning does strike, you know, and one person gets hit, you've got 3 people that didn't get hit that can possibly save you, or at least know where you're at, which would be better than all 4 of you passing and then there's search and rescue having to come looking for you and everything like that. It's another reason I tell you, if something like that does happen, I highly suggest having on your messenger or anything like that, or if you've got cell service and you've been texting family and stuff, pull up the GPS coordinates, text them, say, and tell them what's going on. There's a storm coming in. It's looking pretty nasty. This is where we're at. This is where we're at now. You know, and as soon as you get to your spot, text them again. This is our current coordinates. We're waiting out the storm. Keep them updated. And that's one reason I carry the extra power bank. It always seems like right when there's something going on that your battery dies. Another thing is, I know a lot of cell phones are water resistant now. I always carry an extra Ziploc bag, and if it's getting nasty out, I actually put my phone inside of a Ziploc bag, and I can still text off of it, because we all know how these touchscreens work when they get a little bit of water on them, and you can't get text out, or you can't type or anything. So I put it in the Ziploc bag, and I can still text pretty decently, which makes it really nice, and it keeps my phone dry and safe, and everything like that. So putting it in that Ziploc bag keeps from the screen getting wet, which makes it, you know, when you're texting, it makes it tough. Other situations, if you think there is a snowstorm coming in, if you have any doubts, get off the mountain. If it's getting that bad, or get back to your camp where you're safe. Don't try to wait out a snowstorm on top of a ridge, because you don't want to have to hike back up there the next day in the snow. Get back to camp. You know, and keep your feet dry, everything like that. Some of you guys, like you do it yourself guys, you know, some of your little small tents, you don't have much of a heater in them. Those hot tents are pretty nice. But the thing is your feet get wet, you always got to have extra socks. And that is actually one thing I do carry in my pack as well, is an extra pair of socks, just in case. I mean, if my boots get that wet though, it kind of sucks, but if I do have to spend the night, I can get my boots off my feet, I can put on fresh socks, and at least those socks are dry. But yeah, if you're feeling like you're gonna have issues, you can even do the old school. I used to pack bread sacks in my pack, and like my grandma used to do, put my feet in those and put them back in my boots, and they'd help keep my feet dry. One other thing with those plastic bags is they actually do provide a little bit more insulation. Not letting that heat out as quickly is kind of a huge thing. So those can benefit as well, unless you've get really sweaty feet, and then you're kind of hurting yourself. But it's kind of one of those things of being prepared. Like if you're hunting with me and you're in a drop camp, and I feel like there's going to be something dangerous coming in, I will definitely let you guys know that we might need to come in and get you out early. But it doesn't happen very often. It's actually never happened. It would have happened maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I think. Maybe, yeah, 4, yeah. But the big snowstorm came in between seasons. That's the year I actually lost 2 camps. I couldn't even get back in after this big storm to get them out till the end of winter. That's how bad those were. And I lost several tents that we had to pack guys back off the mountain when I brought them in, and then bring a tent in the next day, which was really unfortunate. But it is what it is. Regardless of what season it is, you got to be prepared in Colorado for huge temperature swings. I mean, in archery season, I've seen it get down to like 8 degrees. And then the next day it's 65, 70. You got to be prepared for that. And that's one thing, like with sleeping bags. Like, I can't elaborate on this enough. You have to understand, when you get a 30-degree bag, it is supposed to be able to keep you alive at 30 degrees, not comfortable. That is one reason I carry the hot hands and the body patches. I run a 0-degree bag year round. If I need to, I open it up. I'd rather be warm and comfy than trying to survive. And I've had clients even in guided camps bring, like 35-degree bags, 40-degree bags, and they froze their butt off at night. Even with the heater going, the propane heater, they just couldn't stay warm. So make sure that you understand that. I'm not saying get a negative 32-degree bag. I also like to have the flannel line bags or the soft bags versus mummy bags and stuff like that. If I do start sweating in those mummy bags, I hate it sticking to me and stuff like that. So I actually run like the old rectangular looking bags now, and I like those a lot more. So yeah, if it's looking like you're going to get some severe weather, get off the mountain, get back to camp. It's better to lose a day of hunting than losing your life. That's a huge thing. And we'll get into the next point of, is that animal worth your life or you getting injured for? Right. So let's talk about the is it worth it factor. This is one of those things that sometimes you have to make that call. Sometimes I have to make that call. Is it worth it for a successful harvest if we, one, won't be able to get out safely, get the animal out safely if it's in a bad position, or can it go into a position, which I understand there are times where you may have a little bit of a bad shot or something and the animal goes into those positions. My brother a couple years ago shot a bull, and what ended up happening was it ended up falling or running kind of down the mountain, maybe 75 yards or so, and it got itself into a little gulch, and he was by himself. He didn't want that to happen, obviously, and where he was shooting the bull, it wasn't in a bad spot, but it put itself into a bad position 10 seconds after the shot. It was dead when it hit the ground going downhill, but it kind of put it into a bad position where him being alone, he could have gotten himself hurt. He could have gotten himself into a bad position, stuff like that. Was it his fault? Not at all. Would it be your fault? Not at all. Now, there is times where I get the phone calls, or I see it on social media and stuff like that. Looking for a packer. If I get one down and I'm 10.5 miles deep, I don't want to lose the meat. That's another factor. For you DIY guys, I highly suggest, if you're in an area, calling the outfitter permitted in the area to have them, in case you have to, come get your animal. Now, here's the deal. A lot of outfitters are going to tell you, can be available, but our guided and drop camp guys are going to take priority. And also, like my rule is, a horse accessible trails where the meat has to be brought down to. If you don't want to make the hike, and you're just say you're by yourself or even with two guys, if you don't want to make the hike back into that spot 5 times in the next 24 hours, don't shoot. That animal, that trophy, the meat is not worth losing. My biggest thing is losing the meat. I hate losing meat. We're not trophy hunters. We are there for the meat, right? That is a huge thing. We need to be smart about where we are going to harvest animals and make sure that we can do the animal justice and get the meat out, whether it's quartered, boned out. anything like that. One of my biggest things is the antlers are the last thing off the mountain. If you get one down and you call me and say, hey, we're gonna, we got it in this spot, and I said, okay, I'll be up tomorrow with the horses to get your meat. The antlers stay with the meat. They don't come back to camp. If you bring anything back to camp, you need to bring like back straps, tenderloins, and neck meat out. You don't bring the antlers back to camp. They can stay on the mountain. Time to a tree, whatever. That should be the last thing off the mountain. And if you're, like I tell a lot of my clients, there's kind of areas where I say it's a no-go. Or if you want to go in there, it's coming out on your back before I come and get it. That is a huge thing. So it comes down to, is it worth it? And if you're looking at that spot and you're not sure if it's worth it or not, or there's a possibility you do get hurt or anything like that, it's probably not a smart decision. One thing I really hate doing personally is, especially in the colder seasons, is harvesting one late, like last shooting light, because once you pull that trigger, you're committed. You are committed to that animal until you find it or you get it quartered out and hung up in a tree and stuff like that. If it's super cold out, you might not want to do that. I don't like doing it when it's negative 10 degrees out, is trying to quarter an animal and everything like that, in the dark especially. Trying to quarter an elk, especially your first time by headlamp, is just outrageous. It's kind of stupid to do. I don't like doing it, even experienced as I am. I probably cut my hand more times doing a late night quartering with the headlamp than I have on every other elk put together. It's just not fun, and especially, I see some guys, they'll light a big fire and stuff like that to keep themselves warm, and they'll switch off. It comes down to that point where sometimes you have to make that decision, and I say just don't get greedy with them. I tell all my clients, we can't get greedy. We gotta be smart about what we're doing. That's a huge thing. Mountain goats, bighorn sheep, stuff like that, even elk, deer. I mean, mountain goats and bighorn sheep kind of have a lot more going in that aspect of, is it going to be safe to get to it at that point once we shoot? So you got to make that decision. You got to be smart about it. Like I said, don't get greedy over something. Don't go deeper than you're willing to. I've had clients go really deep and then call me, and what I wish they would have done before the shot was said, hey, we're on some and we're in this spot. Where can you get to and what can we do? And I would have told them, well, you've got to bring that animal, a couple miles or something out to this point, because I can't get the horses there. And then after the shot, they told me, and they were kind of upset with themselves and upset with me that I wouldn't try to get the horses in there, even though they told me how much deadfall they had to climb over and all that stuff. My horses don't fly. So if it was super hard for you to get in there and you were climbing over stuff and under stuff, you got to remember, I need like a 3 foot or 4 or 5 foot wide trail that's 8 or 9 feet high, to be able to get to a spot with my horses. Otherwise, I can't get in there. And, then it's me basically telling you, well, you better get to packing it and we'll see you in the morning. But, you got to get after it. That's the only thing I can do, especially wilderness areas where I couldn't just bring in a chainsaw and try to cut my way through. So I always tell my guys, like, hey, here's the deal. Here's the parameters. If you're going to go into this spot, here's the issues with that. But it's all up to you. Just don't get greedy with it. Use your head. Don't put yourself into a position over meat, is what I'm kind of getting at. Is you just got to be smart and you got to be safe. And safety is the number one thing. That meat's not going to do you any good is if you die, or if you can't get it out in time and it all rots away. Like legally, if you harvest something and the meat rots, I am almost supposed to pack it out anyways, and then we call the game warden, and the game warden comes and checks it and everything like that. I hate packing rotted meat, especially when I know it's rotted. Capes, same thing. The cape and the antlers are your last thing to worry about. That meat is number one priority, and once you pull the trigger, you gotta focus on that animal. I don't care if your buddy calls you and says, hey, I got one down too, I need your help. You got to tell them, hey, I got one down too, so you're kind of on your own. That's why I tell people before they come hunting, watch the YouTube videos. There's a ton of videos on the gutless method. We made one last year about the gutless method, of how we kind of do it, just to kind of help out. We did it on a deer and stuff like that, because sometimes guys get out here and all they've done is drag out full whitetails, you know, and then process them at home, and they get up on an elk and realize it's 6 times the size and you're not dragging it anywhere. Knowing how you're going to process that animal once it's down is a huge thing. Now, if you've done it hanging, it's tough to go from have one hanging by yourself to doing a bull or a cow even on the side of a mountain. That's why I bring paracord. I bring the carabiners. I can make, you know, pulleys if I have to try to roll them over. It is very tough to do it by yourself, even experienced sometimes. And they don't always fall in the perfect position. So know how to get one processed on the mountain the best you can. I know you can't really practice it at home, but in all honesty, if you're planning on coming in the future, instead of hanging that whitetail by the neck or the back legs and doing it that way, put it on the ground and learn how to quarter it on the ground. From, you know, you can gut it first to get it home, and then learn how to do that. And just remember, you know, an elk's 600-700 pounds, and you got to be able to roll them and move them and everything like that. So having a plan and getting that meat off of the animal is a huge thing. Getting it hung up, getting it cooled down as quickly as you can, and stuff like that is a huge thing that you got to think of. And then if you've got to get it to the trailhead or a trail to bring the packer in, stuff like that, you got to remember that you're going to have to do that. You may have to do that to pack it out. And if you don't want to make that trip by yourself, you know, basically you probably can do, I like hearing the stories of a guy packed, you know, 200 pounds of meat out. So basically he's saying he packed the entire, what he's going to get in processed meat out in one trip. Do a rear quarter, then a rear quarter, then maybe 2 front quarters, and then you can come back for the back straps, tenderloins, and antlers, or whatever. I typically, if I'm doing it, it's a quarter at a time. Back straps in with a front quarter, 1 back strap in with each front quarter, and stuff like that. Also, like, the capes aren't super important. If there's plenty of times I can find capes for guys to replace them. I know you want that cape and stuff like that, but sometimes if it's more of a priority to get the meat off the mountain, then we can figure out something to find you another cape to mount it and stuff like that. And I always suggest, if guys have to pack the elk out on their backs, leave the bone in. I know it's kind of a lot of weight, but leave the bone in, and you can strap it to your pack, and it's in your pack a lot better than just having a bunch of boned out meat sitting in the bottom of your pack. So keep that in mind. I know you out-of-state guys pay a lot of money for an outfitter. You pay a lot of money for your tags, a lot of money to come out here. But at the end of the day, if you spend all that money and then you can't even get the meat out, is it worth it? Or would it be better just to kind of back out and say, okay, we'll try this again in the morning, or maybe we just don't go in here to this spot, because even though there's animals, it's going to be near impossible to get them out. So there's a little bit of a thought for you. So there you have it. Safety in the backcountry is always a priority. Your safety is number one over anything else. You don't have to worry about that animal as bad, because being prepared, being ready for almost any situation is definitely something everybody needs to think about, and you never worry about it until it happens to you. Learning wilderness survival, a little bit of it, learning wilderness first aid just in case, all that kind of stuff. It's one of those things you need to be prepared for. And being overly prepared can also sometimes be more of a hindrance. I've literally had some guys, they're packing so much stuff that they are killing themselves every day trying to get up the mountain. I always tell guys, like, it's good to be prepared, but there's also stuff that you probably just don't even need to have. I would highly suggest against carrying that 10 millimeter revolver. I always suggest kind of going through guys' gear. Send me a gear list or something like that, just because, sometimes I have guys that'll pack so much gear onto the mountain that by the end of the week, they're telling me, you were right, I didn't need this, I didn't need that. By day 3, I quit carrying this. I kind of learned really quick of what I did and did not need. And that's something that comes with experience. I just seen on social media, somebody wanted to see everybody to post their gear lists and stuff like that. But so he could, kind of work to his, or work his to fit and stuff like that. The issue is not everybody's gear list is going to be the same. I don't care where you're hunting and how many times this guy said this or that. You may have stuff that you don't need, and you may have stuff that you do need that somebody else does or doesn't have. But it also does help seeing what other people have and going, oh, that is a good idea. I've had several guys tell me, wow, Josh, you're carrying all these extra medicines just in case. It's really nice that you had extra Aleve or, Benadryl, kind of stuff like that. And they started carrying that kind of stuff. Maybe kicked out something random that they might have had or something like that. So learning other people's gear list is a good idea, and conforming it to yourself and what you may or may not need. Having an emergency blanket or like the little caribou tarp I have could be a lifesaver. But do you have to have it? No. I use it for so many different things. I'll lay it down and put meat on it when I'm quartering out animals. I have used it hooked against trees to make myself a little rain fly when I forgot my rain gear, so I could survive, the storm that we had and stuff like that. Does everybody carry one? No, definitely not. A big contractor size trash bag is almost the exact same thing. I just like the tarp because it seems to be more long-term use versus short-term use. But it is something that I have 2 or 3 contractor bags as well, just in case. And that's what everybody needs to kind of think about, is if you're going to be packing a bunch of this gear and stuff, what can you use that's beneficial for weight-wise, that you can use for several different applications, not just one? If you've got something, besides like a Garmin Messenger or something like that, that's only a one usage thing, try to find things that you can, in an emergency or for regular usage, use it several different ways for different things. Like I said, that tarp, I can use it several different ways. I think it weighs 6 or 7 ounces. It's not really much of a change to me. One thing that I in a way I skimp on, but I don't, is the first aid kit. You don't want to be carrying a 20-pound first aid kit. You'd almost be better off for you and one of your buddies each carrying a smaller kit, you know, instead of one big one. But there's also some stuff in there that you may or may not need. And there's some stuff in those first aid kits that I should probably take out because I don't ever see myself needing it, you know. But it's also, with that kind of stuff, it's so light that doesn't really matter. The other things I see guys carry, which it's up to them. One of my clients, he has his rifle in not a gun sock. I believe it's like a gun sock, but it stretches over just to keep his gun safe. It's a great idea, just because it's easy to get off. It really weighs nothing. But when you're hiking, if you're out hiking with it and you're stalking, you're probably gonna have it off. Scope caps are a huge thing, especially in the snow and rain, because my brother didn't have scope caps on his rifle, and I believe it was snowing or raining, and he checked his scope, and the front of his scope was full of snow. You know, they make the scope caps, they make the neoprene covers, stuff like that. It's great to have and can be a huge asset for you. When you need it, you want it. When you don't need it, it could be a hassle. One other thing I do want to talk about is chambered rounds or arrows in your bows. Obviously with a muzzleloader, it's kind of hard. You know, when we're hiking a lot and we're actively hunting as we hike, we typically do have a round in the chamber. The thing is, we either are carrying our rifles on our backs pointed up, we're carrying them across our chest so we're not pointing them down. I really don't like pointing my rifle down at the ground when I've got somebody in front of me, and I definitely don't like them doing that when they're behind me, just because you never know what could happen. If you're archery hunting, do not have an arrow knocked if somebody's walking in front of you. You're looking up and all of a sudden you take a trip and put that arrow through your buddy's leg because you tripped forwards, is not a good thing. If somebody is doing that, whoever, like if I'm doing that and I have a guide or a client with me, they will, and I feel like we're getting into maybe something, I will put them in front of me and I will just make sure I am within like arm's reach of them the best I can, as they walk in front of me. So if I see something and they don't, I can tap them on the shoulder and kind of give them the, hey, you got to look up, stuff like that. If you are carrying your rifles, you know, you guys, I know everybody knows this, but fingers off the trigger, safety on. Do not point it downwards. Keep the barrel up or to the side. Don't, you know, like when we're walking through thick brush, I will use my gun to put it out in front of me and help push brush out of the way. To me, a rifle is a tool. It's not a, if you're worried about your rifle getting scratched up, I suggest not bringing it on these mountains, because some of the stuff you get to, it is possible it will get scratched up. But when I do that, I have my hand over the trigger guard just so that I don't have something, a stick somehow, and possibly my safety fails, as the only perfect safety is unloaded gun. But I will, you know, one hand on the forend, one hand over the trigger guard so that I can keep that from getting a stick lodged in it or anything like that. Muzzleloaders, if you're doing that kind of stuff, I believe a lot of them, you can pull your primers out and stuff like that. That's a good thing, especially when you're in camp. Guns need to be unloaded, except for, at least muzzleloaders, pull your primers out. You don't want, I've seen guys lean their gun up against the wall of the tent when we get into camp, or a chair or something like that, and all of a sudden you look up and it's falling over. So when you're in camp, unload your guns. You can keep them in the magazine, but don't have them ready to fire, because you never know what could happen randomly and have a gun go off. You know, that's just, I mean, it's common sense, but sometimes you get back, you're tired from hiking all day, and you're kind of not thinking 100% correct. You just want to sit down and relax for a minute, and all of a sudden your gun falls over and stuff like that. Another thing is, when you're on the mountain and stuff like that, always point your guns away from your buddies. I don't like leaning mine up against trees and stuff. I have a bipod on mine, so I usually set it down on the ground with the bipods out. Just make sure your buddy doesn't go to step over it and kick your scope and knock your gun over. It's the same thing. Don't flag your buddy, stuff like that. The best thing is do everything you possibly can to keep you and your friends and everybody else safe on the mountain. That's just common sense. So I'm not calling out anybody. I'm just trying to make sure everybody, sometimes you get a little lazy with stuff, and I've done it myself. I've, you know, had my gun in my arm, on the crook of my arm, turned back to say something to my buddy and flagged him with my barrel, and not even thinking about it. I just seen something and wanted to get a confirmation or something like that, and then I went, that was stupid, that was amateur. So you always want to make sure that you're being as safe as you can. Avoid all situations that could put yourself in harm. Yes, there is times where I have literally been hiking and I'm coming down a different trail back to camp, and I put myself in some positions that weren't smart. Unloaded my gun, did the best I could to be as safe as possible. It's just one of those things you do, you know. It's kind of like when you cross a fence, have your buddy hold your gun, you get across, grab his gun type of stuff. So you always got to think about that stuff. So that's what I got for you. Safety in the backcountry, first aid, some stuff I carry, my survival stuff, everything like that. Be a Boy Scout out there. Always be prepared. Always be safe. Keep your safety in mind over a sketchy harvest or losing meat and stuff like that. Use your heads. Don't do anything stupid. And have fun out there. If you like the video, like, share, comment, follow us, subscribe to us, stuff like that. We'd really appreciate it.